Welcome to Strange, revealing strange stories of the paranormal, bizarre coincidence, and unexplained phenomena. I'm Chris Batchelor. Thank you for listening. You can find out more about Strange Podcast and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter by visiting strangepodcast.com. In this episode, we investigate the WOW signal. Is this evidence of an alien civilization trying to communicate with planet Earth? The notion that the world is flat now seems ridiculous in our time of air travel, space exploration, and satellite imagery. However, this was to our forefathers a fact, a commonly held belief until technological advances in sea travel established the world to be round. In generations to come, is it possible that our commonly held belief that we are alone in the cosmos will be considered just as ridiculous? After all, once we've developed technology to look beyond our current limits, who knows what we'll find? SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has seen astronomers scouring the skies for decades in hopes of receiving artificially generated radio signals sent by alien civilizations. But then there's a good chance we've already found such a signal, and in 1977, we saw the most tantalizing glimpse ever. Nicknamed the WOW signal, this was a brief burst of radio waves detected by astronomer Jerry Ehman, who was working on a SETI project at the Big Ear Radio Telescope in Ohio. The signal was, in fact, so remarkable that Ehman circled it on the computer printout, writing WOW in the margin, unintentionally giving the received radio signal the name under which it would become famous. Despite a lot of effort, no identification has been found for the signal's source, and no repeat signal has ever been found. In fact, it's a complete mystery. The only conclusion that can be drawn is if the signal truly did originate in deep space, then it was either an astrophysical phenomenon of which we've never seen before, or it truly was an intercepted alien signal. To explain scientific observations, the normal method is to construct hypotheses and then test them. If your hypothesis is incorrect, it will fail to explain the observation. You can then continue this way, using different hypotheses, until you find something which can accurately describe what you've observed. But with the WOW signal, researchers ran into difficulty. After trying and failing to find any repeat of the signal, Ehman was skeptical of its origin, stating that something suggests it was an Earth source signal that simply got reflected off a piece of space debris. But when he tried to investigate that explanation, he found only more problems. Investigations found that it was scarcely possible the signal could have originated on Earth, and reflected off a piece of space junk was equally quite unlikely. The received signal was very specific, and these explanations required too many assumptions. A pattern of logical thinking known as Occam's razor was pointing towards this signal having an astrophysical origin, but this provided no explanation for what it might be. The curious WOW signal is more or less a perfect match for what would be expected from a received extraterrestrial transmission. It's been closely analysed as a result, but to date no one has come up with a satisfactory explanation for where the signal came from. For a start, the signal's intensity was observed to rise and fall over a period of 72 seconds, consistent with the rotation of the Earth and a single source tracking across the sky through the Big Ear Telescope's view. This gave the signal a characteristic signature it would be nearly impossible for any earthbound object to match it. It also stood out dramatically over the background noise found in deep space, being about 30 times louder than anything else around it. But by far the most interesting thing about this signal was its frequency. The signal was very sharp, transmitting at only a single frequency. Natural radio sources don't work like that. They spread across the range of frequencies, meaning that the same signal covers a broad band of transmission. The WOW signal is not like this at all, showing only one very specific frequency at approximately 1420 MHz. 1420 MHz, also known as the hydrogen line, is a frequency internationally banned from use by terrestrial radio signals because of its use in radio astronomy. Astronomically, it's usually emitted by neutral hydrogen atoms in interstellar space. Hydrogen is the most simple and abundant element in the universe, and any intelligent civilization would know of its frequency's presence in space and probably be using it to make astronomical observations. As a result, SETI researchers consider it a logical frequency to check for any alien transmissions intended to be heard. It's just as logical that any astronomers elsewhere in the galaxy might think the same way. The final question in the mystery is where exactly the signal came from. Because of the way in which the Big Ear was designed, the signal source can be narrowed down to one of two small regions in the sky, but that's as precise as it gets. This puts the source of the signal somewhere in the constellation of Sagittarius. There are a handful of nearby stars, but it's impossible to tell precisely where the signal originated, at least not unless we ever hear a repeat signal, and given that no repeat signal has yet been found in any of the searches, it's probably best not to hold your breath. To date, most SETI searches have operated by sweeping the sky, observing any spot for only a few minutes at a time. While this allows a lot of coverage, it also means that the likelihood of eavesdropping on any signals that happen to be pointing in our direction is minimal. The other approach would be more like the way the Kepler mission worked, by staring at one particular patch of sky and waiting. Of course, while we now believe that exoplanets are common across the galaxy, we have much less idea when it comes to alien transmissions. For all we know, we may waste years looking in the wrong direction. However, an astronomer at Florida's St. Petersburg College, Antonio Paris, has come up with a potential explanation that doesn't require aliens. At the time of the WOW signal, two sun-orbiting comets, Christensen and Gibbs, were in the same area of the sky. Paris believes these dirty snowballs and their hydrogen clouds could be prime suspects. Luckily for researchers, Comet Christensen passes through the same region on January the 25th, 2017, and on January the 7th, 2018, Comet Gibbs will do the same. Paris hopes to recreate the WOW signal by aiming a dedicated radio telescope at the region, but his team at the Center of Planetary Science is a little short of cash, so they've launched a GoFundMe page to help raise the needed funds to purchase and install a 5-meter radio telescope. At the time of recording this episode, their GoFundMe page has raised £8,000. If you'd like to see how they're getting on, or maybe even contribute to their fund, you can go to the link on the show page at strangepodcast.com. If you'd like to make comment on what you've heard in this episode, you can on the episode page at strangepodcast.com. There you'll also find interesting links to the resources and evidence featured in this episode, Don't forget you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter by going to strangepodcast.com. Until next time, thank you for listening.